Limited in its 19th year, costing me more than £100,000 personally, exacerbated by my trying to hang on to my loyal team at a time when client businesses were firing or furloughing theirs to stay afloat. Having traded for almost 2 decades, I thought I could ride it out, but I learnt that I couldn't. When I thought things couldn't get any worse, a little over a year ago, I was diagnosed with the same disease that killed my dad, who was diagnosed with prostate cancer at just 4 years older than I am today. Having thankfully been granted change of use planning permission 2020 to start repurposing my office building, I was thrown a lifeline as my professional services business eventually failed in the middle of last year. This resulted in the holiday business becoming ever more important to my income. And of the village of Roston, realising I was in a tight spot, I was tempted to ask another person to speak to rally support. But you're busy and you're giving your time generously. So instead, I thought I'd share 3 lines from the 11 people that registered their support. I could have brought John Wheeler, who is busy running his agricultural repair business. He said, we need to be supporting rural businesses, and this proposal does just that. Nick Young, whose barn conversion is my closest neighbour, he said, we will live directly across from the holiday home, and we think the apartments are in keeping with the area. Finally, and possibly most importantly, Sarah Robinson, the landlady of our village pub, said the holiday lets have been a great source
30 seconds left.
Of business to, due to the current climate, we rely on these sales and are in full support of another holiday let. I believe in the use it or lose it approach, and Steve and Sarah at the pub serve some of the best ale around and offer visitors and villagers and visitors a warm welcome. Ladies and gentlemen, as somebody put down roots 21 years ago, has resided at Banktop Farm for most of them, with my wife Helen has raised our daughter Philippa to the point that she'll soon be driving.
Thank you very much, Mr. Davies.
Thank you.
5 minutes. So the next on my list is Councillor Tony Morley, Derbyshire District Council's ward member. And as you know, Tony, you have 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, Chair. Good evening, members. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for the opportunity to speak on behalf of one of my constituents of the Norbury ward. Some thank yous, first of all. First of all, to the officer, Sarah Arbon, for producing an excellent report, which I've got here in front of me. Extremely thorough and extremely well written. And also to Sarah for going out and making a site visit. So that would inform her report. And I know how busy you are. So thank you very much indeed for that. And I'm sure that Miss Arbon will impress your new boss. Congratulations, by the way, Mr. Whitmore. The reason I'm speaking on behalf of Carl Davis is because he had a very, very successful consulting business in the auto industry. And then COVID came along. In order to support his business in the automotive industry, rather than hire offices elsewhere, he decided to build them on site, which he did. And then, as you had just heard, he had 7 staff working, all local people, all locally employed. And then COVID came along and that business fell over. Simultaneously, he was diagnosed with prostate cancer, which he dealt with a radical prostatectomy, which would have flattened most people for quite a long time. However, he wasn't about to let that happen. So he decided to carry on and change the office building, which we kindly given him permission for, into a holiday let, which again, this committee was kind enough to do. And the holiday let, as you just heard, has been successful. So the guy's not giving in, he's cracking on, and he's trying to rebuild another business, rather than let the office building just become dilapidated and fall into disuse and disrepair. As you heard, a lot of support from the local community, because it does bring more trade into the area. And as you heard, it's booked up. So logically, build a little bit on the side. As you can see from the report, it's not particularly intrusive. It's smaller, it's in keeping, in the opinion of Carl Davis and his advisor, and also me, having had a look. And I believe it plays into elements of our adopted local plan, which I have a copy of here. And it actually fits policies EC1, EC8 and EC9, which is promoting tourism in the area. Obviously, it's a finely balanced decision for you, ladies and gentlemen, as ever, and it's deciding whether those benefits to bringing tourism into the area, who will spend money in Ashbourne and, of course, in the local pub, outweighs the benefit or outweighs the actual planning reasons for intrusion into the countryside, which it does a little bit, although, as you just heard, none of the neighbours have a problem with that. So I would respectfully request that you do not follow the officer's recommendation, because there's more benefit in keeping this business going than having it shut down. And thank you very much indeed for your time.
Thank you very much, Councillor Morley. Right, Chris, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. A number of points to come back on, Chair, if I may. Members will note there's two strands to officer's recommendation of refusal here. So we're dealing with a matter of principle, but we're also dealing with the visual impact of an extension to this building. The previous speakers eloquently set out the site history. This building was erected or planning permission granted back in 2017 for a building in A2 use, which would now fall in the new E commercial use class. And the building is subservient to the main dwelling house. It's a relatively modest building, single story, which is well related to that existing house on the site. Now, we're concerned about the growth of that building and the visual impact of that, but we're also concerned about the addition of a new planning unit on the site. So we have accepted the partial conversion of the building initially to help sustain that existing business. And then we've granted planning permission to convert the entire building to 2 holiday lets. What we're being asked to do this evening is to allow further development on the site through the formation of a new planning unit, a new unit of holiday accommodation. Now, government guidance and our own local plan policies are clear that new holiday accommodation is not too dissimilar, very similar to new residential development. We need to be locating that type of development in sustainable locations. Here we are in a remote countryside location. We're away from the most basic of services and facilities. There's no access to public transport, and therefore it is an inherently unsustainable form of development, hence why we're recommending refusal of the application. So there's a visual element and there's also the principle here. Happy to take questions.
All right, members, open to you. Councillor Archer.
Just a quick question about the sustainability issues. Somebody myself who's got a fully electric car, for example, would, if a development such as this was to commit to put in a car charging point on site, would that mitigate at least part of the sustainability issue? I know when I'm looking to go on holiday to places, one thing that is stopping me, making me take a diesel car instead, which is far worse for sustainability, is the fact that a lot of the places that I could stay at don't have an option to charge. So this sort of, could we put things in such as car charge points and put that as a condition in order to try and mitigate some of the sustainability issues?
The provision of an electric charging point would be a form of mitigation, but what you've got to think is how many people have electric vehicles, how many visits to site will be via an electric vehicle, and the very location of this site is such that those that are travelling with a car that has a normal combustion engine will be making visits to settlements and locations to access the most basic of services and facilities, and that would result in a high number, or certainly a higher number of unsustainable traffic and transport movements to and from the site.
Okay. Councillor Mrs. Burfield.
Thank you, Chair. Could I just have confirmation, please? I perhaps missed it when the applicant was speaking, but do we know how long the current 2 holiday lets have been in operation?
The applicant will be in a better position to advise on that, but if we look at the relevant planning history section of the officer's report, you can see that the conversion and change of use of the entire office block to holiday accommodation, so 2 units of holiday lets, that was granted in March 2021, so fairly recently. And then we had the conversion and change of office block from 2 offices to form 2 offices and a holiday cottage, and that was granted in 2020, at the end of 2020. So the initial holiday let towards the end of 2020, and then further holiday let developments early 21.
Okay. Councillor Gamble.
Thank you, Chair. Sorry, just another question about the plan application that was passed in 21. So, would I be right in assuming that some sort of assessment took place as to whether that holiday let was sustainable or not? And presumably then the decision was that it was. Was it? Or?
Yeah, it's a slightly different proposal because we had an existing building, so we had an asset, if you like, or building that could be converted. We had allowed the partial conversion of that building in 2020. So in accepting the partial conversion, we had accepted that it was a building worthy of retention and reuse for such purposes. What we're being asked to look at this evening is a new building, and a self-contained holiday let, so a new planning unit. So it's a provision of a new holiday let on the site rather than conversion and reuse of an existing building.
So if the building exists, you can have an unsustainable tourism business?
Well, there's recognition in our policies that some buildings contribute positively to their surroundings and are worthy of conversion and reuse.
And was this building one of them? Because this was a new build, I think, wasn't it?
It was, but we officers accepted that there was a need for, or there was 2 elements to it, because the holiday let would help sustain that existing business. So there was...
but unsustainably.
Yeah, well, I suppose the officers originally recommended refusal of the A2 use because of the unsustainable location of the site. So that building had a use attributed to it, an A2 employment use. The partial reuse of that building, on balance, wasn't considered to result in additional unsustainable travel or transport movements, and it also helps sustain that existing business, so there are employment benefits as well to be gained from that development. But it's a completely different proposal to what's before us this evening.
Just out of interest, how was a holiday let helping if I've understood what the applicant said, an automotive business?
It was the viability of that business. It was to help sustain that business, to provide a form of income. They were 2
completely unconnected businesses, were they not? Or?
Yeah, two unconnected businesses, but it was to help sustain that business. That was part of the case that was submitted to the local planning authority.
Right. Just another question. Just a carry-on question from the question Councillor Archer asked. It was the answer you gave that I found a bit surprising when you said how many people own electric cars. Maybe not very many people do now, but would you agree that when the government brings in the regulations to outlaw the sale of diesel and petrol engines, there will be a lot more people with electric cars?
They would, but that's just one form of transport, isn't it? I mean, the government tries to encourage people to walk, to cycle, and to have ready access to a wide range of services and facilities. It still relies on one transport method to get to and from the site.
Thank you, Chair. To let you know where I'm coming from, Chris, as leader of this authority, I'm very keen that we encourage businesses to grow, particularly after the pandemic. There are 3 raison d'etres for planning, as we know: economic, social and environment. The question I've got is, I've not had a benefit of a site visit. I've not had a chance to go down there and have a look. So can you help me with how far away is the nearest living habitation, house or whatever?
Yes, I'll just go back a few slides. Fortunately, it's not the greatest of presentation to be able to see the nearest 20, but here you can see the site hatched and highlighted pink in the centre of that slide, and you can see existing built development, which is in a yellow colour outlined in black. So to the right-hand side of that image, you can see a dwelling house there.
How many metres away, Chris? And any neighbour objections?
No, there's no, well, there are, if you look at the representation section of the
I've
report.
seen the representations, thank you, but
Yeah.
any significant neighbour objections?
We've got 6 letters of support and 5, oh no, sorry, all 11 representations received in this case are all in support of the application. So no objections.
Thank you. I'd like to hear what other members think, but I think you can see where I'm coming from at the moment.
Anyway, I've got nobody else down for questions, so I'll move into debate. Councillor Fitzherbert.
Thank you very much, Chairman, and thank you very much to the officers for the report. Obviously, we all know we've had a pandemic. Some businesses have gone bust, some have survived, and some have had to pivot. You've heard that on the radio quite often during this pandemic. This is a classic example of somebody pivoting, using their brains to actually create a business from where they were before. I know this gentleman employed 6 to 8 people before. That's why he needed a larger office. That's why we granted consent in 2017. He now employs 2 in that particular business, I gather, and he had an office that was empty. We then granted a year or so ago the use of these other buildings to accommodation. I've had the privilege of looking at site and looking at this, as I would with my tourism hat on, I suppose, and they are splendid conversions already. Remember, we are, although we might not get the income, we are producing the applicant is producing non-domestic rates, which we might not have got if the business had gone completely bust. So we're getting income, and the locality is getting income for local businesses and the local traders in and around the Dales and obviously the Peak District. For me, the local members in favour, 11 representations are in favour, and the neighbour has given us their full support of this, especially the local businesses as well. So I've come to the conclusion that I think we should move this modest extension. It is a very modest development in the countryside, and its actual development would create minimal harm, I believe, in the area. This application will prove to be a marvellous extra asset, and it's a great shame members couldn't visit it on site to see just how 5-star this is for the Derbyshire Dales and the Peak District. And I believe that on balance we should go against officers' recommendation, although I thank them for their thorough report, because this application is compliant with policies S4, EC1, EC8 and EC9. So I move it, please.
Thank you very much, Councillor Fitzherbert. Councillor Purdy.
Chair, I'm happy to second that. I was prepared to move it, and thank you for your answers, Chris. I have every great sympathy with the applicant, but this is not the reason for me moving this. It is fundamental on the 3 planks of the basis of why planning should go forward, and that is economic, social and environment. And all we've got really to go against this is that environment aspect, and I don't think it's strong enough, quite frankly, to warrant refusal. So it's very rare, as you know, we go against officers' recommendations, but I think in these circumstances, I think it's right to do so. We've got no significant neighbour objection, which is why I teased that out of Chris. I think there's full support in the area. I think as an authority, we should support business, particularly after the pandemic. So not normally opposing officers' recommendations, Chris, but I'm sure you'll understand why we're going down this direction. Up to second.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Purdy. Councillor Mrs. Burfoot.
Thank you, Chair. Well, when I first read this report, obviously, I'm afraid I've not been able to go and see the site, but reading the report, right from the beginning, I was struggling with the recommendation of the officer, I'm afraid. We appear here to have an established business that seems to be very popular from what I've read in the report. It would appear to be an asset to the local community. It appears to be supporting local tourism, and I'm here again, I'm afraid, with the problem that I have with policy S4, which is about sustainability, and that's one of the 2 reasons why it's recommended for refusal. Now, I absolutely understand that our officers, you know, they have to base their recommendations on our approved policies, but I think, you know, we've got to be realistic here. There are already 2 holiday lets here. We're asking for what? The applicant is asking for 1 more. Now, I would put money on the fact that the 2 holiday lets that are already there, nobody will be coming on a bus. I've said this before many times, I think, you know, 2 parents, 2 children, bags, all the paraphernalia getting on a bus. It's not going to happen. I think it would be slightly different if there wasn't already the 2 holiday lets there, but we're going up from 2 to 3. I really don't think it's going to make a huge difference, but I do understand where the officers are coming from, but I've got a feeling we might be on a consensus of opinion on this one, to be honest. So I'm happy to support.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Burfoot. Councillor Archer.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, not a lot else to add to all that, really. I was going to say very similar to things to what the other councillors have said in advance. Just to add that I know this area well. I live in the neighbouring village. My brother lived just up the road from there until very recently. I cycle past it all the time. It's a very good holiday let as it is. And I don't think, looking at the scale of this extension, personally, in my opinion, it wouldn't have a significant impact on the environment and surroundings. I mean, I am a bit of a crusader for electric vehicles, and I do wonder if we could put a sort of condition in to put an electric charge point in, because the issue here is, I think, and I absolutely accept the point the officer made about this, but seriously, as somebody looking to go on holidays in the UK with an electric car, most electric cars now have a range of getting on for 300 miles. You can go on holiday, but the thing that puts people off taking an electric car on holiday is once they get there, can they charge up to use it to go to around to visit all the local areas? And I actually think it would potentially lead to people who would come to the Derbyshire Dales anyway in a diesel car, come into this place because it's got an electric charge point, which actually might save on pollution levels and air quality, if we could put a condition in to have an electric charge point. I'm going to support it anyway because I agree with all the other things that the other councillors said, but I'm curious about whether or not we can put conditions in to do with things such as putting a charge point in to encourage more sustainable visitors and traffic.
I don't think we could condition that. I can ask the officer to put a footnote on the decision notice about it, so that's the way we could handle that. Okay, Councillor Gamble.
Not much to add, really, other than, really, I mean, one of the arguments I'm afraid I do disagree on, to say it's unsustainable to change from a workplace where people were driving in cars to say that you can't drive to a holiday let in exactly the same place by car just seems illogical. I hope we're not going to have too many arguments like that in future reports. And this argument against how many places do we have where we say there's an existing place of employment, and therefore any increase of it is okay because the principle of that employment is established? Well, I think that's the case in this case. And other than that, I agree with everything else that has been said.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Bull.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Well, I echo everything everybody said. I'd just like to make a point out that the sustainability and transport. I moved down here and went and live in Norbury myself when I was 13, and to this day there's never been a bus route that way, and there never will be. So as regards looking for public transport, then I'm afraid you won't. Horse and cart might be the best way forward. So yeah, so I am in favour of this. I don't feel that it is overdevelopment of anything. I think it's just increasing and giving the opportunity for somebody to keep a business going. So I shall be in favour of it. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Bull. Councillor Buttle.
Yeah, thank you very much. I'm kind of minded with everybody else to say yes, but you know we've got to back the officers when we come to sustainability. There's no energy statement. We don't know whether or not this is going to be a particularly carbon neutral building. We don't see how it's going to be heated. There's no comment about solar panels. We've got nothing about electric charging points. And we've got, you know, by 2050, this is yet another building that will have to be dealt with because we've got a zero carbon target. So I think we should have supported the officers on this one and only let them take it forward if we've got something which was guaranteed to be no problem in the future. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Councillor Buttle. Councillor O'Brien.
Thank you, Chair. I support the recommendation. I think the time to have considered refusal was the two previous applications for the change of use to holiday accommodation in the first place. I can't see that a 6.6 by 5.3 metre extension suddenly makes a development unsustainable. So I fundamentally support the application. However, I do think that the policy we have, policy EC9, is not something which we should lightly just rule out of court. I think it does have merit, but I think there are going to be a number of these applications where the policy is going to come into play. And I think perhaps when we look at so two things flow from that. Firstly, when we look at review of our local plan, I think we should be looking at a requirement for, in these circumstances, what I would call a sustainable travel plan to come forward, where the applicant suggests how they can reduce the need for people to use diesel or petrol-powered vehicles to get there. I think that would be a positive way forward. And I do think in this particular case, I agree with Robert Archer and Claire Gamble that as this is contrary to policy EC9, we will be quite within our rights to ask as a condition that that is mitigated by the provision of appropriate electric vehicle charging points, which would go some way towards reducing the impact of the loss of the sustainability policy. So I would ask that we incorporate that condition within the approval, that the applicant is required to make provision for an appropriate number of electric vehicle charging points, because I think, as others have said, if you do want to holiday sustainably and you do want to go here, you couldn't if there were no provision for you to recharge your car. So I think that's an entirely appropriate a condition to put on. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Donnelly.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Well, I know the area very well, and probably one of the members that was on the last site visit up there. I think the development that's come out of that was been very, very good. I think in that, you know, we're looking at a refusal on this tonight, and I can't see personally how we could actually defend that against the inspector. So I'm going to go with the recommendation against offer refusal.
Thank you very much, Councillor Lundy. And last on my list, it's Councillor Fitzherbert. Oh, sorry, Peter. Sorry. Oh, okay. Well, in which case, if you go first, then we'll go back to Richard. It's you, Peter.
Thank you, Chair. I was really struggling with this recommendation from the officers. I thought, you know, the present time with pandemic, coming out of pandemic, we've got to do everything possible to give support to the countryside and tourism. And Councillor Archer's suggestion of EV charging point being put in is a splendid idea. I think the applicant could actually advertise that it's got electric charging point, which will encourage more electric cars to come along. I mean, that's what we've got to do. That's the future. I would have liked to see solar panels as part of the application, because it's a new bill, really, and I think we should, on new bills now, I think we should really go for solar panels on new bill, but we can't have everything. So if we can just have a EV charging point as part of the condition, that would be splendid, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Sack. So back to Councillor Fitzherbert.
Okay, just to sum up, I do know of a couple of holiday lets that do have EV chargers in the Derbyshire Dales. And what I'm going to suggest is that if my motion is passed, I urge the applicant to look at grants for EV chargers. There are out there. I can point them in the right direction. Yeah, as I said, I've personally managed to get a couple in and around our village as well. So there are opportunities out there, especially through the tourist board as well. And it's not necessarily for that, it's also for sustainable tourism. So bike racks and bike storage as well, which is useful. But I think ultimately members that the market will decide. And so I suspect the applicant and lots of other holiday lettings in and around our area will move very, very seriously if they're not already to reduce their carbon footprint. Anyway, I hope members will vote with me on this one. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Fitzgerald. Councillor Purdy, and then I'll go to the vote.
Thank you for letting me come back, Chair. This question's been asked before about condition, and we were told previously we can't condition it. Can we just have that affirmed or not, please? We can have a footnote, that's my understanding, but not, we can't condition it.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Purdy, for the opportunity to come back. I think we need to clarify what the motion is as well. Obviously, I can understand that members want to go off against officer recommendation. I think I understand the reasons for that. I think reflecting on the policies, and I think Councillor O'Brien mentioned policy EC9. Now, strictly speaking, policy EC9 deals with caravan and campsite developments, but it sets out quite a good framework for the sorts of considerations we look at in terms of considering whether that type of development is sustainably located. It talks about being within an attractive 10-minute walk of facilities and services. But I don't think that policy strictly applies to this development. I think we need to be extremely careful in terms of our approach to this type of development. What we're dealing with here is a new unit of residential accommodation, albeit for holiday let use in the countryside. I think what members are saying here is that there are unique circumstances in that there's an existing business on site, holiday lets on site. This would supplement that existing business and wouldn't result in unacceptable environmental impacts. That's my understanding of the motion, the reasons for the motion. I think in terms of the electric charging points, the policy doesn't require that electric charging points are provided in respect of new forms of holiday let accommodation. What it requires is that new holiday lets and other forms of residential development are sustainably located. It's certainly not, it wouldn't pass the test of conditions, in my view, in terms of being an acceptable condition to attach to this development. All we can do is recommend that it is something that the applicant explores, and we can introduce an advisory or an informative on the decision notice if members were minded to go against officer recommendation.
Okay, thank you very much, Chris. So it's been moved and seconded for approval against officer's recommendations. And of course, we'll add the footnote for the electric charging. So all those in favour for approval against officer's recommendations, please show. All those against? And any abstentions? So that's been passed, that's been granted. Thank you very much. Okay, so moving swiftly on, should I say, going back to the agenda, item 5.1, which is Matlock Indoor Market Hall, Baker Road, Matlock application number 21/01337, full. There is a bit of late rep, so I'll let you read that and then we'll move on to the speakers. We're ready? Okay then, we have 3 speakers on this. The first speaker is Mr. John Phillips, the agent, and he'll speak in favour of the application. You have 5 minutes, and I'll let you know when you have 30 seconds left.
Is this on? Yes, it is. Okay, thank you very much, Chair, for the opportunity to address the committee. We've supported Derbyshire Dales District Council with the development of the proposals for the cinema-led regeneration of this part of the town centre, which aims to transform the site of the former Market Hall. And we've been involved since March last year. The scheme before the committee today is considerably changed from the initial sketch proposals which were previously produced prior to our involvement. A key aspect of the scheme's development since spring last year has been the influence of the community on the scheme. We've listened to suggestions and feedback provided by the community representatives, and specifically from Matlock Community Vision Steering Group, concerning the emerging design proposals, and where possible, within the technical, legal and budgetary constraints which have affected the scheme, we've developed the proposals in line with feedback from the community. Whilst the retention of the Market Hall's reinforced concrete frame enables the scheme to retain much of the embedded carbon within the structure, it clearly presents, and which is clearly a positive, it does present a challenge in terms of the footprint and the height and the form, which are obviously predetermined. Working largely within that predetermined fixed physical framework has presented some design challenges, however, and working with the council, MCV, the cinema operator, the county council and others, we believe that the following has been achieved by the developed scheme. The corner entrance, which has been inserted to the food and beverage unit fronting Bakewell Road, has been introduced in order to improve visibility, highlight transformation within the town centre and attract footfall and visitor attention. It's improved pedestrian access, which reconciles issues of mobility, flood risk, and the scheme has been supported by a detailed flood risk assessment, by the way. Commercial and operational issues. Despite very constrained site access, ramps are compliant with the building regs, and they've been provided to get into all the units. Fenestration has been rationalised, modified, and includes brise soleil screens, which will help reduce solar gain. The result of the above design changes has achieved the following as well, which is the street scene along Bakewell Road has been improved with a strong western commercial anchor destination being provided, which will benefit the town centre as a whole. And an improved gateway to the town centre from the northwest has been provided with active frontages, replacing what could be described as a bunker-like facade at the moment. The proposals are designed to allow efficient incorporation of future enhancements. These could include public realm, which has been considered, and public art as well. The proposals are fundamentally sustainable, with the reuse of a redundant existing building situated in a walkable town centre location. And we've worked with MCV and others to adapt aspects of the scheme in order to minimise solar gain and ensure energy efficiency. Stone block work, which will be removed to create fenestration, will be cleaned and reused within the scheme. So that's reuse again, which is a sustainability positive. And we've audited the scheme in line with the Council's climate change SPD as well, which is also being used to make some improvements to the scheme. The application is consistent with national and local planning policy and is supportive of Matlock's regeneration objectives. And the scheme will provide Matlock with a valuable leisure and cultural asset which will benefit both the local community, support the visitor economy and boost the town's nighttime economy. We would recommend the Council and the committee approve the scheme before them tonight. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The next speaker on my list is Mr. Ken Parker, Secretary of Matlock Civic Association, to speak in favour of the application. You have 3 minutes, and I will let you know when there's 30 seconds left.
Thank you.
This site has been a blemish on the town for a very long time. We welcome the District Council's intention to redevelop the site, and the design of the building itself will be a huge improvement. I should say the Civic Association is part of Matlock Community Vision, who I think are speaking later. The new uses should breathe new life into the town. So the association supports the planning application, but with one important caveat. We do not agree with the current proposals for the public realm around the building, but we do agree the way to make progress is to grant permission subject to conditions. Negotiations on the conditions must ensure a significant improvement in design, materials and street furniture for the public space around the regenerated building. I'm just going to quote from 3 relevant statements in policy PD1 of your local plan, which should provide the context for a new public realm scheme. Firstly, all development should be high quality design that respects the character, identity and context of the Derbyshire Dales townscapes. Secondly, development should contribute positively to an area's character, history and identity. And especially relevant, public spaces should be well designed, safe, attractive and complement the built form. Currently, the public realm on this site is a mixture of paving blocks, 2 foot by 2 foot paving slabs and stone paving. So it's a very 1980s scheme. But at the very least, we should keep this style of public space, perhaps by cleaning and reusing what already exists. Ideally, we should be aiming for a significant improvement. But the proposal currently is wall to curb tarmac on the entire public realm, a backward step for such a prestige site. Apart from the tarmac, there are just 2 bus shelters of inadequate capacity, open to the prevailing southwesterly winds, but intended to serve several heavily used bus services. So while we suggest an appropriate condition is the way forward, the wording of the proposed condition 5 should be clarified so that it applies to the whole frontage. The current wording only seems to refer to the frontage of the corner food and beverage unit, not cinema frontage, not the access to the new community room. So the post-approval negotiations on this condition will be crucial, and the District Council must be seen to applying its own local plan policies to its own development, especially on such an important site. Thank you. Thank you very much. The last on my list is Miss Helen Crane, Matlock Community Vision CIS. You have 3 minutes and I'll let you know when there's 30 seconds left.
Okay, thank you. My name's Helen Crane. I'm the company secretary of Matlock Community Vision, which is a community interest company. Obviously, we're mentioned in the report and we've made a submission which gives some detail of our thinking. I just wanted to give a bit of background, so particularly for councillors who aren't representing Matlock and who we haven't met. We came together in 2014 when local residents felt that Matlock needed something more special than a proposal for a big supermarket, and extensive car parking, which was the proposal at the time along the Bakewell Road. And we have over time managed to bring together people who've got quite a significant level of experience and expertise who live in and around Matlock, who felt very strongly they wanted to put their knowledge, experience, ideas to positive use in the town. And for the first few years, we were involved in talking to businesses, talking to residents about what people's vision for the town was. And it became very clear that there was still a big consensus that ideas which appeared in the 2008 Matlock Town Centre supplementary planning document were still resonated with people in the town. And once we'd established that, we were able to work closely with the council to wrestle with the issues about how to bring to fruition a development which both brings into use underused assets, achieves real social and environmental benefits, and also meets the required financial bottom line. So it's our view that after contributing over many years, a very large number of people actually, we feel that this application is a great step forward, and so we're hoping very much that it will be approved tonight. Just one point, obviously Matlock Civic Association have just spoken about the details, and we completely agree about making very clear the conditions relating to the public realm. And we noticed that there was one objection on the website from somebody who said that it simply didn't
30 seconds left.
give enough a decent environment for bus passengers. And we completely agree that with all the points that Ken Parker just made about that. So we feel that we want this proposal, which we hope will increase the pride in the town, draw visitors and increase footfall to businesses in the town. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay. So over to Chris.
Thank you, Chair. A number of points just to address there. I think, as eloquently covered by the previous speakers, this development is a positive for Matlock. It will add to the shopping, the retail, sort of commercial and leisure offer within the town, thereby enhancing the vitality and viability of Matlock. So it is a positive development. We are satisfied that it's a form of development that does enhance this part of the town. The frontage to the site does form part of the primary shopping frontage along Bakewell Road, and it is an underutilised part of the existing building. So the development does deliver improvements to the building, which is a prominent building on the approach into Matlock from the Roseley direction. It will add or breathe new life into this part of the town. And it is seen as a positive development that is in accordance with development plan policies. There are a number of points I just need to come back on, one of which is something that's covered in the late representation sheet. So we've had comments now back from the lead local flood authority. And just to clarify to members that we aren't proposing here to increase the volume of the building. So we're making use of an existing building. You'll note the request for a surface water drainage scheme to be submitted and approved prior to the commencement of development on site. Now, as officers, because there isn't any proposal to increase the volume of the building, we feel that condition might not be necessary. So if members were minded to approve the application this evening, we'd like authority to be delegated to officers to enter into discussions with the lead local flood authority to establish exactly what it is that they're requiring and to ensure that any condition that's imposed is necessary and meets the tests of conditions set by national guidance. Just addressing some of the other points, there are aspirations, and the council would like to see improvements to the public realm. And we recognise that tarmac surface isn't a particularly attractive treatment to the footways. However, just to clarify, the local planning authority or the district council only controls some of the land, which is currently paved, and we don't control the footways, which is something that the county council control, the highway authority, and their preferred treatment is a tarmac surface because that's an easier surface from a maintenance perspective. Paving slabs are more difficult to maintain. There's ponding issues and there's other issues with that type of surface, which means that if the local planning authority or if the district council wants to consider an alternative treatment, it will result in the need to help fund that new surface, and also to potentially pay a commuted sum towards the future maintenance of it as well. It's something that we aspire to do. We do want to improve the public realm in that area, and it's something that we're committed to, but it will be subject to funding that's available. But it's something that we are actively exploring. But it's something we'll have to do in conjunction, in collaboration with the highway authority. Happy to take questions at this stage.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Obviously, there is the issue of the bus routes and the likes. Now, has that all been moved along? And the other situation is the idea. I quite agree in the sense of the paving looked at, but obviously, as you've said, it is down to the county council to do it. But surely each of its surrounding area should be within keeping of what is already there within the town, and surely that can be imposed upon that. But it's the bus routes. How have we managed to sort that area out of what we can and can't control over that?
Yes, so there has been extensive dialogue and discussions with the community, but also the county council and the highway department, the local highway authority. The bus shelters, or there is a local bus team. They've looked at these revised or these proposals, and they're happy that acceptable provision is being made. Each of the shelters has capacity they have 9 seats in them, so they have capacity to accommodate at least 9 bus passengers, and the number of shelters and the capacity of each shelter is considered sufficient based on the number of the buses that serve this particular area. So the local bus team are satisfied with the provision that's been made in this case.
Okay. Councillor Mrs. Burfield.
Thank you. Well, I've got two questions. I think the first one about the public realm has to some extent been answered, but it has been flagged up as a vital component of this scheme, particularly in regards to the footway frontage on Bakewell Road. And I just wondered if, I think Chris has more or less answered my question, but I think if we can do everything we can possibly do to try and persuade the county council to not just do their default position of using tarmac, because assuming that if this application gets approved, I wouldn't want to see people in the future saying, my goodness, you've done all that and it's we've still got horrible tarmac. So I think you've really answered that question. I'd like to think that you're doing everything you possibly can. The second question is about the hoarding on where the community room is. So the community room won't be used, assuming that this application goes ahead. It's not going to be utilised right from the beginning. So I couldn't see, I think this has been mentioned by Mr. Parker, but I'm not sure, somebody mentioned it, I've seen it somewhere, that there's, the materials have not been specified, and as you come into Matlock from the west, I wouldn't want to see some horrible hoarding stuck up there to spoil what would be a good scheme. So have we got any materials specified for this hoarding?
Yes, there is a condition to agree details of materials treatment and materials to be used in the construction of all external surfaces. So we've got a plan. Unfortunately, it doesn't show it very well on this presentation, but we've got a plan that shows the development pre and post the development, or the second phase, if you like, which would deliver the community rooms. But it does show the position of the hoarding, its general height and appearance. But there is a condition to agree external materials, so that forms part of the development. But I think you can rest assured that the main sort of corner of the building will form part of the first phase, so that more prominent part of the building will form part of that initial development. So it will lead to quite significant enhancements to the character and appearance of this part of Matlock.
Okay. Councillor Slack.
Thank you, Chair. Looking at 7.12 and that area, are you confident, Chris, that the floor levels are high enough to sustain any flooding? Because we're going to see a vast increase in the next few years with climate change and flooding coming off the hillsides down into Matlock. Because the previous flood, the water couldn't get into the river because the rivers were up and the flat valves were closed. So you will get a big backup of water coming into Matlock in flood time. So are you confident the floors are high enough?
We are. We have taken this matter extremely seriously, because we know that flooding has been a problem in this part of Matlock, and we have involved the lead local flood authority in very early discussions about this development, and we have prepared a detailed flood risk assessment which considers a flooding event and also factors in additional 20% capacity for climate change. If you factor in 30% additional capacity, there would be some breach of the finished floor level. But what we're saying here is that with flood resilient measures, so barriers and things, designing the building so that it wouldn't be severely affected by a very severe flooding event where you locate sockets and things, everything else, it means that the development will be flood resilient, and certainly will be more flood resilient than other buildings and premises within this part of Matlock.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Councillor Slack. Councillor Gamble.
Thank you, Chair. So go back to the public realm again. Can I just ask the question, just so I'm just in my mind? We're sort of been told we have no choice about this tarmac. Who's laying it?
Well, we kind of do have a choice. What you've got to understand is that the county council are responsible for maintaining the highway. And
I understand that. Who's laying the tarmac?
So that'll be the county council would undertake those works. If we wanted to propose a different treatment, then we have to pay for that treatment and also pay a commuted sum towards the future maintenance of that treatment, which is non-standard treatment to a footway.
So if this case, are you saying county council are now determined that tarmac is going to be the payment of choice through Matlock? So is that going to be then extended to the rest of Matlock now?
That's their standard treatment. So to roads and footways, it's tarmac finish.
But it's not currently, is it? In Matlock?
Not in Matlock, no. But so the council is committed to improving the. Sorry, I don't know if my microphone keeps cutting in and out. Yeah. We are committed to improving the public realm and having a better surface treatment, but there's costs involved, and we have to consider those costs and the funding. And the commuted sums that would be involved towards future maintenance of that surface. But we are exploring that. It's something that we are committed to looking at.
It seems one very, very simple way around this. Take up the slabs that are there and then put them back down. That's labour. You don't even have to pay for materials.
It is, but you've got to think ongoing maintenance costs. It's the highway authority's land, isn't it? And it's their preferred method.
So when you say that's their preferred, have they told you categorically you cannot have slabs?
No, what they've said is that if you want a different treatment, there's a cost involved to having that treatment, and also you would have to enter into. So
it's not that we can't do it; it's we've chosen not to pay for it.
Well, no, we're exploring that. We want to do it, but it's the money. We need to make sure it's viable.
Can I just ask this just as a question from the future, really? And then, so what we're saying is that we have a policy that says there has to be a high quality, well designed, and attractive environment. But if you're an applicant that doesn't have the money to provide that, you don't have to.
No, you don't, I don't think you've understood the application. So the application doesn't include this land because this land isn't owned by the district council. We can only influence development on land we control.
So we're back then to you're saying we can't control the pavement.
Well, no. What we're saying is that
can we or can we can't control the pavement? Yes or no? Just without waffle.
What I'm trying to say.
This is getting like a slanging match. It's out of order. Sorry.
I'm not. I'm just trying to understand what's been actually told here.
I'm sorry. I do believe Councillor Gamble is out of order. I can explain fully.
Didn't ask you.
Well,
Excuse me, Councillor Gamble.
You're not working with.
Councillor Purdy interrupted my question.
Excuse me.
There are rules in council, and you're going on and on and on, and they are not.
I'm just seeking to understand what it is we're doing here with this public realm.
I think we've teased out the fact that some of the land is not in our control and it's controlled by county council. If you want to take anything up, I suggest you have a word with Councillor Burfoot outside of this meeting, who's the county councillor for Matlock. She might be better placed to try and get something done. Councillor Burfoot, yeah.
If I may, Chair, yes. I mean, I didn't know it was the right time to actually say it because the application hasn't been approved. But as county council, I will certainly be making noises.
I thought you would be, Councillor Burfoot. Anyway,
good.
The next on my list.
Do I not get another question?
As long as it's pertinent.
It is pertinent. I just wanted application. I can see we've had, unless I missed it, in the cinema has been assessed against the environmental supplementary planning. Has the food and beverage outlet been assessed against that as well? I wasn't sure.
Yes, just to clarify, it's the entire development.
It is that applies the entirety. Also, and can I just because it was something that came up as well, the large event that's coming out, have you actually had extraction expertise that says that has to be the vent, it has to be that big?
The reason it's positioned in the position that it's located because we feel that will ensure extraction of a hot food takeaway type of establishment. So if you'll note from the description of development, we haven't got an end user for the food and beverage unit. So it could be a hot food takeaway, it could be a cafe, it could be a restaurant use, and they'll all have different extraction needs. So we've planned for worst case scenario to ensure that extraction is taken of odours and smells is taken away from the building, and the actual flue or the position of that extraction system is such that it would cover for worst case scenarios.
And an extraction expert's given you that advice, have they?
It's architect led, yes, and involved our environmental health officers as well.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Gamble. Councillor O'Brien, and then we'll go into debate.
I've got 3 questions. I'll ask them separately, Chair, if you don't mind. Firstly, I see there are 2 sets of toilets within the proposals. Can you tell me whether there are any baby change facilities associated with the toilets, and whether the cinema toilets in particular will be accessible to members of the public at all times when the cinema is open?
They're matters that I can't clarify at this meeting. Obviously, the building and the users will have access to toilet facilities. The development will have to adhere to building regulations as well, so there'll have to be accessible toilets, and I'm not sure if the building regulations require baby changing facilities, but if they do, this will be fully compliant with that.
Okay, on the vent, extractor vent, can you tell me whether that is integrated within the fabric, or does it project from the northwest elevation?
I'll try and show it on a plan for you. So you can see, unfortunately, the presentation is not great, but you can see just the outline of the tree on the far left-hand side of that image. You can see the protrusion of a column type feature. That's where the extraction system will go. So it will protrude beyond the exterior of the existing building.
Okay. Now, my third question, I do want to go back to this public realm issue. I do think some of the answers, I have to say, I do think some of the answers being given are confusing our role as a planning authority and an applicant here, which I think is rather dangerous territory. You can confirm, though, that the site boundary, as shown by the red line, does include all the public realm, including the footways.
It does, but in terms of land ownership, that's not reflective of our land ownership.
That is the planning application itself, which we're determining includes all the public realm.
It does, yes. Yeah.
Okay. Now, when I look at paragraph 716, there is one sentence in there which I have to say does concern me, and that's when we as a planning authority are saying that within the current budget there is insufficient funding to meet the cost of an enhanced treatment and its future maintenance. I'm not sure that's an appropriate statement for us to make as a planning authority. That's a statement for us to make as an applicant. So I'm a little surprised that statement is in there. But what I would ask you is, if that statement weren't there, would you be recommending that the public realm treatment is different from tarmac?
Well, if you read the entire paragraph, it says the standard tarmac treatment of the footways is not in itself considered to be so harmful so to warrant refusal of the application in terms of its impact on the character and appearance of this part of the town. So we've assessed the application on the basis that tarmac treatment to the footways will be delivered. But it's part of the application that we can't control because we're not the local highway authority. We are committed to enhancing the surface if we can, if that's feasible.
Well, as we said, it's within the planning. Let me ask the question a different way then. Are you saying that without having regard to the cost issue, are you saying that you consider tarmac to be appropriate?
that's the conclusion to that paragraph. Yes.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. So we'll move into debate. Councillor Purdy.
Thank you, Chair. Well, it's been a lot of years tortuous path, hasn't it, ladies and gentlemen? I go back as far as 2007. I don't know if anybody else can go back further. I know Councillor Martin Barefoot's been very heavily involved in this for a long time. And along the way, there's been some serious hiccups to all of our ambitions. Talk about Summerfield, then it was Tesco, and then Trent Barton, and so on and so forth. So there's a long history to this. And I'm really pleased to see this come forward. And since 2019, since I've become leader, I want to thank Giles Down and Dr. Steve Capes for keeping myself and our deputy leader abreast of this situation. And I say situation because the pandemic has increased lots of costs. And it's been a great worry to us that the applicant might actually withdraw because of this. And I'm so delighted that he's still on board because this is a fantastic scheme. And if anybody has not yet gone to Belper Cinema, I do encourage you to go, because if you want to see the quality that can come to Matlock, that's exactly what you'll get. It's just excellent. And it will, of course, increase the nighttime economy. I can assure you, members, that our officers are working very hard with the county council officers, but you have to accept that tarmac is their baseline policy. And if we want to improve that, then it will cost. If you see York flagstones in and around the area, I might remind you, if I may, that that was a result of planning game from the Sainsbury's development. So we were fortunate there that that was paid for through that route. We will do all that we can to try and improve that public realm. And running alongside this, and I can't give too much detail, I just want to assure members that we are moving very solidly towards, when government announces tranche 2 monies for the Levelling Up Fund, our officers are already working hard on a business case for that. And that is seriously looking at Bakewell Road. So I'm more than happy to move the recommendations, Chair. I do think we have to accept the condition 5, because I do think it's a question of nice negotiations, encouragement with the County Council. If not, I do have to say that I do think we've got to find monies from somewhere else to fund that improvement on the tarmac.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Purdy. Councillor Barefoot.
Thank you. I'm happy to second this application for approval in line with officers. It certainly has been a long process to get to this stage and long awaited. And I don't normally at planning meetings or any meetings, I don't think, sort of do a list of thanks, but I do have to do it tonight, and I do have to pay tribute to the hard work that's been done by Matlock Civic Association. We've got Ken Parker here, and MCV. We've got Helen here, and also to all our officers here, including Giles and Steve Capes, and the planners who are working on behalf of the council to put this application in, and the architects, Lathams, and the cinema operators, because I too was fearful that with rising costs we might not get to this stage. Now, I think we probably all accept that this gateway into Matlock from the west has been somewhat unattractive, and I think the report refers, with a quote, to an uninviting structure. I think that's somewhat of an understatement, to be honest. And I think, you know, if we do approve this application tonight, it will be a welcome addition to the town. And going back to sustainable locations, this certainly is one, isn't it? We've got good access to public transport, we've got car parks, we're going to have cycle parking provision provided, and I think I'm right in saying that we're going to have some more disabled parking spaces put into Sparvilla's car park. Obviously, I do share the concerns, and I think they are really relevant concerns about the public realm. But as I think it said in the report, I don't think I certainly don't think that would warrant a refusal of this application. So I put my trust in the officers to do what we can. One thing I would just finish by saying is there's been lots and lots of meetings and discussions with various bodies, and I hope that will continue to the completion of this scheme, and I'm looking forward to it. I would also just say that I have had one or two people say to me, why do we want a cinema? But I think I'm right in thinking that when there were consultations in the past, this was asking for people's views. I think a cinema was something that they actually thought was a really good idea. So I'm looking forward to it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Burf. I've got two more on my list and I'm going to go to the vote. Councillor Slack.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I fully support this application, very much so. For many years, this area has been letting Matlock down. We've had indoor market, which never really worked. It was like a bit of a dungeon, really. And I'm pleased to see that we are moving forward with this. I'm one or two concerns. I'm concerned about the food and beverage takeaway. A takeaway is all right, but restaurants far better. I think if you're coming to watch a film, it's nice to have a meal before you watch the film in a proper restaurant, and I would like to see that, proper restaurant. Also, another point which for disabled people, we haven't got a disabled lift for people to come off the top car park down into the cinema area, where they've got to travel right from the car park the other side near Twigs to get to in wheelchairs. So I think we ought to look really at putting a lift in somewhere where they could come down in wheelchairs off the top car park. But I still support this, but it's just amendments which could be added. If the group agree, so. Yeah, I'm supporting this, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor. The last on my list before the vote is Councillor O'Brien.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I think there's a lot to commend in the application, but I also think there are some elements which still at this stage could benefit from some improvement. I always look to schemes being exemplar rather than being good, and I think this could be made an exemplar scheme with some quite minor low-cost modifications. So the sort of thing I would have in mind is that I would expect, given that this is a publicly funded development, I would expect the public toilets to be open to members of the public, particularly those using the bus facilities throughout the time that the cinema and the food and beverage facility is open, and I would have expected to see that conditioned as part of the approval. I would have expected to see some more detail of the climate change adaptations, but they're referred to, but there is no detail unless you deep dive into the case file and see that green roofs on the bus shelters have been rejected. A permeable external public realm has been rejected, and there's some scant reference to different forms of heating. But I do find it strange that we don't have any detail of those adaptations. There's welcome reference in the report to an acknowledgement that the remnants of the bus station are going to be left there for who knows how long, and a hoarding is proposed. Now, good, but I think we as a committee need to see what's going to go on that hoardings. What are we expecting to see on it? So I would hope again that officers would look to condition this such that the design of those hoardings is brought back to the committee for approval. What we don't want is just some blank brown plywood put up. We want something which actually is as attractive as it can be, given that it's probably going to be there for who knows how many years. And I have to say that that northwest elevation is in danger, and the associated public realm is in danger. It could easily let down a really excellent development. We've got quite an intricate design of stone and brick inset panelling, but then we've got a bus shelter plonked in front of it. It does seem to me that the elevation's been designed first, and then the bus shelter has been put down as an afterthought. Now, to me, that isn't how you design an elevation. You design the bus shelter and the elevation together. So I would have hoped there's some further thought could be given to that. Plus the fact, as one of the speakers has said, we've got a bus shelter catering for a large number of passengers, and the shelter is totally open to the elements. Now again, given the bus shelter is within the planning application boundary, we need to exercise some control over the design of those bus shelters. Like we should on the design of the external vent, if it has to be a vent, then we look to see how we can make it feature of the building. So we use, again, we're looking at having some public art incorporated into one part of the elevation. So one technique you use is to say, okay, we have to have a vent, so let's turn it into some sort of public art feature which becomes attractive and doesn't just look what it is. That again is something I think the officers should look carefully at and work with the applicants as we go forward. And on the public realm, and I have to disagree entirely. I think this is something which the tar macadam finish is entirely inappropriate to a new building of this nature and stature. I think it lets it down in the same way as if we get dressed up to go out to the cinema, we don't go wearing our slippers. So in the same way, we don't have a tar macadam curtilage to a magnificent new building. And I think as a planning authority, we should recognise that and differentiate our role from that as a funder of the project. So I would ask, actually, and I'm not, condition 5, I think as one of the speakers has said, condition 5 should at the very least apply to the whole of the frontage to the building, not just to the Bakewell Road frontage. I'm not sure whether that's intentional, that it's only applicable to half the elevation there. But I would ask the mover of the motion that is changed so that it refers to the entire frontage, both elevations. And I'd also ask that when that detail is received, that it's brought back to this committee for consideration and is not delegated to officers. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Right, so we'll move to the vote. So it's been moved and seconded for approval as set out in the report and with what Chris commented on. So all those in favour, please show. All those against? And any abstentions? So that's been carried. So thank you very much, members.
Chair, may I just respond to Councillor
Yes.
Bryan? I made a note of your points, Councillor Bryan. I could not agree to change a condition. I think that would have some implications I'm not aware of. So I wouldn't like to take that route. I'd want more information from officers before I set that path rolling. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. The last on my list of the substantive business today is item 5.2. It's application number 21/01225. It's a full application. It's by Her Majesty's Prison, should I say, Sudbury, and the applicant's the Ministry of Justice. So we have only one speaker on this. So I'll take the late reps first, if you want to read the late reps, and then we'll move on to the speaker. Yes. Jason, could you give him a copy of late reps? Okay, members? Yes. So I have on my list a Mr. Tudor Jones
Tudor Jones, yeah, that's me.
to speak. Yeah, 5 minutes. I'll indicate when you've got 30 seconds left.
Super. Thank you very much, Chair. Thank you, Planning Committee. My name is Tudor Jones. I work for Cushman & Wakefield, and I'm the planning agent for this application, working on behalf of the Ministry of Justice. So this application is in relation to HMP Sudbury, which I'm sure you're all aware that there's an existing long-established prison. It is a Category D prison. We are proposing to increase the capacity of the prison, but importantly, we aren't extending the behind the wire. It is all within the existing grounds of the prison. In terms of the background, there is an imperative need to increase prison places across the UK. The government has set a target of 10,000 places across the UK, across the variety of different prisons. We're looking at a Category D prison here, and the importance of that is to ensure that we have got the right level of prisoner in that category. What we've got at the moment is we've got not enough capacity within Category Ds across the country, so therefore we are having men and women in Category A, B and C who could be entitled to go into a Category D. So that's preventing them getting the necessary training and rehabilitation in order for them to be better integrated in society, and is also costing the taxpayer more money because we're having to provide them more security than is needed. So this is a key priority for the Ministry of Justice. They've done a review across all of their different prisons, and HMP Sudbury was identified as a suitable candidate for expansion. In order to do that, they looked at the assessment of regional demand and have a look at their population management team. Sudbury is currently at capacity of circa 580 prisoners, and we did an exercise to see of how it was possible to increase the number of bed spaces within that. And importantly, it's not just bed spaces, it's also the ancillary facilities, car parking, and in this instance, a multi-faith centre. So after Sudbury was selected, the Ministry of Justice appointed a team to produce a robust planning application, which is the one we have before you today. I'd like to also say that there's a significant emphasis here on energy sustainability. The Ministry of Justice has got very high ambitions for carbon neutrality. So the proposed development that we have before us sees 2 new house blocks, which are 2-storey with a pitched roof, providing 120 bed spaces. Also some ancillary support in services, including the multi-faith and the car park. It's important to note that the net increase in bed spaces is only 80, because as part of the application, there was a demolition of a 2-storey H block, which had 40 dwellings. So we're only looking at an increase of 80 in terms of the capacity, but we are providing 120 high quality spaces. The scheme has been designed in consultation with the local planning authority through a pre-app process, and we also engage with the parish council, the local councillors and the neighbouring landholder, which is the National Trust. A key consideration for this scheme has been heritage. We've got the Grade 2 listed folly, the Sudbury Hall and the registered sort of park and gardens, and the team have worked really hard to ensure that the proposal doesn't have a significant impact on that. A key point was in relation to the landscaping strategy in order to how we could look to screen the development. And I'm really pleased we were able to work with the landscape officer and the planning officers to find a solution that works, and that was updated during the course of the determination. I note that some concerns have been raised by local residents in relation to overlooking, as noted, and that's also within some of these late representations here from Councillor Allison. As noted in the officer's report, the distance from the proposed house block is greater than 200 metres from a nearby resident, and the multifaith centre greater than 100 metres. So we don't consider that there is any issues here in relation to impact on amenity. And as I said before, these proposals are within the wire. We're not looking at an extension. There was also some comments in relation to drainage and surface water. We've submitted all technical information with the application. There were no objections from the statutory consultees, and as noted in the update by officers, that the building will be building reg compliant. Overall,
30 seconds left.
Thank you. Overall, it's considered that there are many benefits from the proposal. We'll be delivering new prison places to meet identified need. That will be improving outcomes for prisoners, which will include improvements to training and provide jobs in the construction phase. Importantly, we'll be delivering a biodiversity net gain of 22%, and the buildings will be BREEAM excellent. So we believe that this application should be approved, and we agree with the officer's recommendation. Thank you very much.
Bang on the money. Thank you very much. So, Chris, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. I think the previous speakers covered the background to this application very well. This has been a process which has involved the local planning authority, in that we've had early engagement with the applicant to address some initial issues we had with this application. We feel that we've secured a building or a development that's acceptable in terms of its visual impact, but also a building and a development that delivers quite a lot in terms of biodiversity net gain, the environmental elements as well. So the measures to mitigate the effects and adapt to climate change, it ticks all those boxes. The key issue, or one of the big issues with this site, is the impact on heritage assets. So the speaker mentioned the Grade 1 listed hall. We've got the deer cote that's nearby. We've got a registered park and garden, and we've also got a conservation area as well. Now, you'll note from the officer's report that there is a view, or there will be a view of the house block buildings, which are 2 stories in scale, from the hall, Grade 1 listed hall, from the Queen's Room on the first floor. Now these buildings will be viewed in the background to a deer cote, Vernon's Folly, and the purpose of that structure was to be an eye catcher in the landscape. It's quite an ornate structure, and there was concerns that the house block buildings will equally appear conspicuous in landscape terms and thereby harm that heritage asset. But with supplementary planting, and bearing in mind that there are already buildings on site that are higher than the 1 story, we're satisfied that the impacts can be mitigated. However, we do recognise as officers that there is less than substantial harm to that heritage asset. But you'll note from the officer's report that we consider the benefits of this development to outweigh that harm. Happy to take questions.
Councillor Slack. Seen. Can you turn your microphone on, please, Peter? Can you turn your microphone on, please? No, you need to turn it on, Peter. Thank you.
It seeks to support generation of energy from renewable and low carbon sources, provided that the installation would have the significant adverse impact. My question is, what sort of low carbon is it? What is the generation?
It might assist, Councillor Slack, if I just show you the elevation. So you'll see there is a statement that's submitted with this application. In terms of microgeneration, the roofs of these buildings are covered in solar panels. So that's
Solar panels.
yeah, it's a solar panels. So the solar panels will serve the energy requirements of the house block and perhaps some of the energy requirements of the wider site as well.
Very good, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Slack. Councillor Gamble.
Oh, thank you, Chair. Could we just go back to the slide before with the outline plan that we started with?
Yes, these are I think existing plans initially. So the previous speaker mentioned an existing house block, H-shaped house block that sat on this site.
Yeah, it wasn't what.
So these are the proposed plans. So this is the block plan. Shows the
Right,
supplementary
okay,
plan.
One. So
Yep.
in that case, then, which is the multi-faith centre?
That's right at the end, but I can get to that if you like.
Yeah.
So these are the house block buildings. You see the solar panels on those buildings.
So I'd just be interested. I just wanted to ask if you could tell me on the border with the multi,
Yep.
where the nearest houses are.
I can show you on a plan, but one plan is at the beginning of the presentation, one at the end. But this shows you the layout of the multi-faith building here on the western fringes of the existing.
Because obviously,
prison site.
we know who's the councillor that's in our group, and I know the point I've been taken, but the houses are 100 metres, but I'm told that the gardens are nearer than that.
Yeah. So if you look at the building, so you can see its scale here and its general design. And you can see the openings there that will face. So if we go back to the block plan, here, look, you've got gable end on this side and you've got this wing on the back. So that gives you an idea as to the elevation that will face generally in that westerly direction.
Oh, thank you for that. But
then if we go back.
Yeah, if you go back to the, thank you. I know it's a few back, isn't it?
We can get there, there we go. So if you look on this plan here, you can see the confines of the prison and you can see the existing residential development at the northwestern part of this site plan. So can you see those existing?
So yeah, the multi is the H block thing. That's the thing that's going down, isn't it? And then there's the little other one in purple. Is that the replacement?
So if you can see the multi-faith building is at the western side.
That was one that I was more interested in. Now it's the multi-faith one, the one in the little sort of nook on its own.
That's it.
Are there gardens then that are on that border?
They're a significant distance away. So you've got what was the remnants to the parkland remnants to the hall, which is covered by the conservation area. Beyond, so you've got that intervening.
I know you think that, but I've got to ask, haven't I? Is there any possibility that we could just put obscure glazing in that? Would that harm the use of the multi-faith building too much, just on that elevation, to have some obscure glazing?
I just don't. With the supplementary planting, it's not necessary given the distances involved.
I think we're told, aren't we, that the supplementary planting can't do anything because of the CCTV lines, though. So that although I know it's going to be there, it can't grow up enough, can it?
No,
from what I understand, because of the CCTV.
No, but there is existing planting, within that area in the conservation area in the form apartment to the hall as well, which will help.
So it's there's no chance of getting the obscure glazing then, just to make the people who live there a little bit happier?
It's just not necessary to make the development acceptable in planning terms, so it wouldn't be an acceptable planning condition.
It would make good relations with the locals, though.
Thank you. Anyway, Councillor Archer.
I apologise if this is a stupid question in advance, because it might be.
Don't worry about it. Right?
Paragraph 5.12, just the S106 money, it says Chesterfield Royal Hospital to get 102,000. I'm just wondering why it's Chesterfield Royal Hospital, which is some distance away. That's what I want to check. So that's why it might be a stupid question. So I just wanted to check. Yes. So can someone just clarify that reference to Chesterfield Royal Hospital in relation to the S106 money, please?
Yes. When I looked at this report, I did cover it at paragraph 7.31. So the District Council sets out its approach to developer contributions in the adopted developer contributions SPD. And normally what would happen is the clinical commissioning group would identify any needs arising from this development and would apply a formula that they use to work out a developer contribution that would be commensurate with the demands that this development would place on their infrastructure. For some reason, Chesterfield Royal Hospital are commenting on all our applications seeking monies, but to require developer contributions, they have to be SIL compliant. There has to be a capital project or something to spend the monies on, and it has to be demonstrated that the contribution is reasonably related in scale and kind to the development. And that's not being done here. I think what Chesterfield Royal Hospital need to do is to speak to their clinical commissioning group to identify that they are at capacity and to make sure that their needs are accommodated for in any programme for any capital projects towards healthcare infrastructure.
To answer it for you, Councillor Archer. Well, in a roundabout sort of a way. Councillor Mrs. Burford.
Sorry, it's me again. No, I'm not. Just in Councillor Allison's the questions that she's asked. She says, I'm not seeing in the report any conditions relating to the site operation when construction starts, but the answer is about how long they have to commence the development, etc. I read from that she meant, I can't see anything in the conditions about working hours. Have I missed something? In other words, you know, something to protect the residents from working on Sundays and what have you.
Protection from the builders or the prisoners, Sue?
The builders.
Sorry.
Well, I think, you're probably right, Councillor Burford, having read that. I think it does imply, doesn't it, that she's looking at restrictions relating to construction. If members were concerned that the proximity of the development to existing residential properties may result in adverse impacts on residential amenity, then it could be reasonable to impose a condition to control hours of construction.
Well, we do that normally, don't we? Can I ask another question?
Yeah, of course you can, Sue. Yeah.
I noticed we haven't got anything from DFRS, but I am on the fire authority, and I'm very supportive of sprinklers, and sprinklers have to be put in at the build stage. So I would have thought they at least should be put in the corridors. Not expecting them in each of the rooms, but at least in the corridors. And then just about this loss of privacy. Obviously the residents are worried about loss of privacy from the impact of the multi-faith centre. I'm not sure this is a question really, but I'll say it anyway. I can't see the point of not doing it. Why not just put obscure glazing in? I mean, we're not talking about having obscure glazing in somebody's sitting room. We're talking about people going into a multi-faith centre to do what they do in a multi-faith centre. We're not talking sitting on a settee having the view spoilt, are we? But if it makes the residents feel a bit better because of the loss of privacy that they're worried about, I can't see the point in not doing it, to be honest. But that's my view.
Okay, thank you very much,
Thank
Councillor
you.
Barefoot. But anyway, the last on my list for questions, Councillor O'Brien, then we'll move into debate.
Thank you, Chair. Well, Sue Barefoot asked my first question about why there wasn't a condition relating to working hours. It surprised me. Going back to this centre here, Chris, while you've got it there, can you tell me which of those elevations is actually the one which the residents will see?
Councillor O'Brien, my understanding is the top left elevation is the elevation that will generally face in that sort of northwesterly direction. So you can see there's two.
So it has two large, are they windows or what are they? They're not French doors, are they? I take it. They're windows, are there, those two on the right?
They are windows, yeah, feature windows.
Two feature windows, which obviously will be quite visible from the end of the gardens. Is that right? And then there's 3 or 4 other windows, which are probably less of an issue.
Yeah, I think as the speaker mentioned, these openings are some distance away from the properties to the northwest, over beyond sort of intervening land that form a parkland to the hall. So the distances involved that you wouldn't suffer any loss of privacy.
Okay, I accept that's your view. There seems to be a difference of opinion as to how what that distance is. You quoted 100 metres. Councillor Addison says if you measure from the end of the gardens, it's significantly less than 100 metres.
Yeah, but it's still a significant distance, even if those gardens are 20 metres in length. We're talking 80 metres away from the boundary.
It's just a matter of accuracy. You know, if it's 80 metres, it's 80 metres rather than 100 metres. Is it the garden's only 20 metres long? Is it?
Well, I'd have to scale the drawings off to find out an exact measurement, but we're talking significant distance.
Okay, but less than 100.
Well, if you take it, it depends on where you're taking the measurement from the rear.
Right. But it is that top left elevation there with the two large glazed openings. Is that?
Yes, that's my understanding. Yeah. So if we go back to the block plan, there, look, you've got the gable end on here. Then you've got this wing at the back. There's this elevation here.
Yeah. I mean, do we know what that room is inside with the two large openings? Is it?
If you just bear with me 2 minutes and get the plan, I can tell you exactly what room that serves.
I apologise for this, but as we haven't been able to go and see the development, you have to ask these questions here.
We might need to do. I mean, I've got all the plans here. It's useful to be pre-warned of these questions to not result in significant delays, but I'll bring the electronic drawing up and have a look. Yeah, there we go. Yeah, so we've got my screen. I'm going to share that image. It's not the best, unfortunately, but you can see the seating area there. So that's the main sort of faith area where presumably services and the main gatherings will take place. So that will be served by those two feature windows on the gable end of the building. And then you've got sort of kitchen area here, a bit of a meeting room on that side of the building.
You will be able to see straight into the operational faith area across that field, essentially, as the windows are at ground level. You go down to ground level.
Yeah,
I'll tell you what. We'll ask the applicant if he could, if we just suspend the meeting for a minute so he can give us some direction on this.
Thank you. Just something I'd like to point out, that there is already an existing multi-faith centre that we are demolishing. So we are putting back a new one. So there is no new issue of overlooking. There is already a building there. So we are demolishing one and building a new one. So I think, Chris, if you can there is a slide which shows the existing and then the proposed. Also, the nature of a prison and the nature of a multi-use, the prisoners will need to be accompanied by wardens in these areas. You know, this is a secure premises. This isn't something that that they need to be accompanied with the relevant security measures in place. So the building on the left-hand side there, the dotted line, that is the existing building. It's actually closer and more orientated toward the houses. The diagram on the right shows the proposed larger multi-faith in order to take the increased capacity. But you can see how the orientation has been altered. So we have been mindful of this issue.
Thank you very much. I hope that answers your question, Councillor O'Brien. So anyway, I'll move into debate. Councillor Lees.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I've spent quite a few visits to this premises, the prison, work-related, may I ask?
Oh, thank God for that, Stuart. Thank God you were going to give me a heart attack.
Along with Councillor Donnelly as well. We have been regular visitors to the prison and know it quite well, along with Sudbury Hall as well, may I add. And I'm happy to move this application as written, and I think looking at on site, I go past it daily, and I should say quite rightly so that I think we're looking at 100 metres plus away from these residential properties, and I haven't an issue with it, and I'm happy to support it. And for Mrs. Burfoot's thing, Sudbury Prison have got their own firefighting unit down there as well as, so they are on tap.
All the time.
All the time.
On tap.
Thank you.
Councillor Donnelly.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just like what Stuart says, I mean, we've been down there many times, and I think we're talking about the distance between the residential and this building. If you knew the site well, it is quite a considerable distance, really. So I don't have any problems with that. I think the last time I went down there, went down on a visit, and we escaped from there because he was driving, so that's how we got away with it. We got out of there. But no, I'm more than happy to support the recommendation.
So you're happy to second it, Councillor
Second
Donnelly?
even.
We all know about Stuart's driving. Thank you very much. Councillor Buttle.
Yeah, sorry, I think my question was dealt with, and I was a bit late to the party here. I think a lot of the time we've been wondering what it is that we should have seen if we'd been on a site visit. I think it's made me appreciate site visits more this day, this evening, where we've not had site visits. I'd just like to say I support the site visits, and we should go on them for pretty much everything. Because
I mean, generally we would go on a site visit because of the security reason. We won't be able to get on, and you would have a hell of a long way to walk to go and look at it.
I should go with Stuart.
Probably got you in and out of there in 5 minutes flat. Please. Anyway, moving swiftly on, we'll move on to the vote. So it's been moved and seconded. Councillor Gamble.
Sorry, but I did put my hand up a couple of times.
Well, you'll have to stick your hand up a little bit further. I'm afraid
Rightio.
my eyesight's not as good as it used to be.
All rightio. Well, I think this is left again. This is the site visit thing. We could have had maybe the opportunity to have appreciated the gardens and things, and I'm afraid there are still some outstanding things that make it very difficult to make a proper judgment on this. We've been told that there's an existing multi-faith centre, but I have no idea how it's built. I don't know what windows are on that elevation that we're now looking at are in question. So yes, there might be a building, but I don't know what the elevations were, so I don't know what the changes are there. So I'm afraid on that basis it was very difficult to really go with the recommendation.
So, Councillor Barefoot, and then I'll go to the vote.
Yeah, I mean, what's jumping out at me is this this statement by Councillor Allison, and where it says raised with me by residents relating to the loss of privacy. They've obviously taken, you know, they've taken the trouble to go and talk to her about this, and they're clearly worried about loss of privacy. I mean, maybe they consider at the moment that they've got loss of privacy, so they'd like something to be done about it. I really can't see the problem. I've not really understood why we couldn't just condition obscure glazing. Just can't understand why we can't do that. I don't understand that.
Well, mind you, suppose if you obscure glass and you've got prisoners inside, you can't see them.
They've got wardens with them.
Yeah, but they probably. Yeah, there again, if it was a multi-faith centre anywhere else, will we require obscured glass?
I'm obviously not au fait with prisons and prison life.
Oh well. Anyway, diverging again. So anyway, we'll move to a vote. So it's been moved and seconded for approval. All those in favour, please show. All those against? One, and any abstentions? No. So that's been passed. So anyway, we can feel a lot safer in Derbyshire Dales now because you're having an extension to the prison. Anyway, thank you very much, members. Just a bit of housekeeping now to do. So moving on. So the next item is information on active and closed enforcements, just for noting. I therefore move. Second. All those in favour, please show. Thank you very much. And appeals process report. That again's for noted. I don't know whether you want to say anything, Chris, before I move to the vote for noting.
I think it's worth mentioning the 4-lane ends appeal decision because members will recall members went against officer recommendation on that particular item, but that the appeal was subsequently dismissed. So Councillor O'Brien led members. Sorry, I'm just looking at the decision notice. He led the case for members in respect of that appeal, and with the assistance of officers. But what it does highlight is that with the level of complaints post that decision, the inspector gave that quite significant weight and deemed that the measures that had been installed by the applicant or the appellant in this case were unacceptable, and hence why he ultimately dismissed the appeal. So we are looking now to enforce those conditions.
Okay, so I therefore move for noting. Second, Councillor Donnelly. All those in favour, please show. And thank you very much, members. That concludes this planning meeting for February.